Victor Vran Overkill Edition is an enhanced version of a game that launched over 2 years ago now, and with it comes some enhancements as well as two expansions called Fractured World and Motorhead Through the Ages. Now I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute, but the game itself is an action role-playing game, something similar to a Diablo. But don't expect this to sort of reinvent the wheel in a lot of ways, and don't expect it to be better than Diablo or its contemporaries. It's more of a pivot of the genre rather than a direct competitor. In Victor Vran, you play Victor Vran, who's a demon hunter, and the story, while told in some humorous ways at times and some decent writing, it's not that it's forgettable, but it's not exactly the crux or the reason you should play this game. Instead, it comes down to the really fast in terms of how quick you get from area to area gameplay. So in Victor Vran there are these areas, and each area has a series of, say, tasks to complete. Some of them are time based, some of them require you to use certain things called hexes, which sort of are modifiers or mutators, which will either increase the power of the enemy or other similar things. And it's within these objectives that sort of replayability comes into factor. The areas themselves take just a couple of minutes, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes to explore. There are a range of various sizes. Some are actually rather small, some are quite expansive. But yet again, none of them feel like it's too small or too big. They all fit their purpose really, really well, and each area has a load of different enemies. And that's one of the cool things about it is as you go on, like, you learn new ways to attack because new enemies come that need different approaches to take them out. But these stars add a lot to the completionist in me, at least. I kept replaying an area just to complete a single task, and that's something I normally wouldn't do. And even beyond that, the game isn't small. This is a couple dozen hours worth of content, and it's all really enjoyable, and it's not easy either. It's not a game that you could just power your way through by grinding. There's a whole loot system like you expect from the genre, and it works really well. I played this on PC, and you press the middle mouse button to move between ranged and melee, and it works really well because there's a cool different range of weapons at your disposal, and you can equip everything. So it's not like you have a class and you can only equip staffs or swords or two-handed or guns or whatever. Grenade launchers, there's grenade launchers as well. You pretty much have everything at your disposal, and there's a lot of added to it. On top of the equipment, there's destiny cards which add bonuses and buffs to your character, like for overkills. Overkill is when you absolutely decimate an enemy, as you can probably guess. You launch a bunch of little projectiles which then explode on impact, and this can really change the gameplay up a bit, and this sort of makes it a much more feeling like an action game rather than an action role-playing game. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a jump to it as well, so you can jump in this game, and that's not something normally in the genre, and it kind of does mix things up a little in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay. When you're in a room and you're surrounded by enemies, you can climb up, you can run up something and jump off it, give yourself some breathing room to maybe drink a potion or whatever. You also have demon powers, and these are 2 slots to basically attack or heal or whatever you want to use it for. And there's a lot of variety to it. So as I said, there's not classes, but in terms of the differences between classes, a lot of the stuff is here, and it's free for you to mix things up a little, how you approach things. And there's a lot to just the base game, but Overkill Edition also has 2 expansions, and the 2 expansions, especially aesthetically and tonally, are very, very different to the base game. You have Motorhead Through the Ages, which is a heavy metal bloodbath crazy story that's narrated by Lloyd Kaufman. If you don't know who that is, he owns Trauma, which have put out tons of movies, mostly weird and bad movies, but he's a kind of cult legend in a weird way, and this sort of Motorhead who's heavy metal royalty, right? And then you have Fractured Worlds, which kind of really changed the visuals up a little, and it allowed the team to sort of explore more interesting looking things, and the visuals in this game are actually pretty decent. I played this on PC 1080p 60 and didn't have a problem whatsoever. It looked really crisp and clean. It always ran way above the 60 frames a second. I don't have the most incredible hardware either. I have an R9 390X, which is 2 years old at this stage, and even then it wasn't the highest high end. But yeah, it ran really smoothly, never had issues, and there can be a lot of effects on the screen and a lot of enemies, and sort of it held up really well. But this was a game I played a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but sort of fell off. And then Overkill Edition, which is also now its first time appearing on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and for what I've seen of those versions, it looks and runs really smoothly. They all run at 60 frames a second. Granted, PS4 runs at 1080p, Xbox One I think runs at 900p, which is almost standard, but it's an incredibly fun game. Like I said, don't expect this to be the pinnacle of the genre, because it pivots rather than it tries to take over, and in that sense it carved its own path, and it means then that this game stands on its own as one of the most enjoyable games of its genre, but also bringing its own little interests and approaches to the mix. And if you're in the mood for any type of action or role-playing game, I would highly recommend Victor Vran, because in a year that's been absolutely incredible so far, Victor Vran does stand up to them. It's definitely worth your time, and especially with the summer looming, you could do a lot worse than play this game.